The great hall of the Galactic Confederation buzzed with excitement. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy had gathered for a special day. Today marked 200 years since the humans had been wiped out. The celebration was grand, with lights dancing across the ceiling and music playing from every corner. Ambassador Keffer stood at the center podium, his tall blue frame casting a shadow over the crowd. His people, the Zolani, had led the war against the humans long ago. Now he was here to remind everyone why it had been necessary. Friends from across the stars, Keffer began, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive hall. Today, we celebrate peace. Today we remember the day our galaxy became safe. The crowd cheered. Beings with tentacles waved them in the air. Creatures with wings flapped them with joy. Even the rock-like granite people made clicking sounds to show their happiness. Keffer raised his hand for silence. 200 years ago, our galaxy faced its greatest threat. The humans were a young species, barely able to travel between planets. But they were violent beyond measure. They fought wars on their own world that lasted for years. They built weapons that could destroy entire cities in moments. He touched a control on his podium. Above the crowd, a hologram appeared showing the planet Earth. It looked dead and empty, covered in gray dust and broken cities. This is what remains of their world, Keffer continued. They destroyed themselves before we had to act. Their nuclear weapons turned their blue and green planet into this wasteland. Nothing lives there now. Nothing grows. It is a warning. To us all about what happens when a species chooses violence over peace. The crowd murmured in agreement. Many had heard stories of human brutality from their grandparents. Stories of how humans would attack without reason, how they never tried to talk before they fought. But we learned from their mistakes, Keffer said, his voice growing stronger. In the 200 years since their extinction, we have built something beautiful, 12 species working together. No more wars, no more fighting. Trade flows freely between our worlds. Children grow up knowing only peace. A young Zolani in the audience raised her hand. Keffer nodded to her. Ambassador, my teacher says humans were smart. They made good machines and fast ships. Why couldn't they learn to be peaceful like us? Keffer smiled sadly. Because, child, some species are born with darkness in their hearts. Humans could build wonderful things, yes, but they could only think of using those things to hurt others. They never learned that the strong should protect the weak, not destroy them. The crowd nodded. This was the lesson they had all learned in school. Humans were the example of what not to become. Our scientists have studied their ruins for decades. Keffer went on. We found records of their wars, their weapons, their plans to spread across the galaxy. If they had survived, they would have brought their violence to every world. Every peaceful species would have suffered. He paused, looking around the hall. But they are gone now. Their threat ended with them. We are safe to build our better future. The celebration continued for hours. Beings danced, shared food from their homeworlds, and told stories of the peaceful galaxy they had created. Children played games where they pretended to be explorers finding new worlds to welcome into the Confederation. But far away, in the cold, empty space between stars, something stirred. Captain Jorok was having a bad day. His salvage ship had been searching for scrap metal for 3 weeks with nothing to show for it. His crew was getting restless, and his fuel was running low. The outer rim was supposed to be full of old wrecks from the ancient wars, but lately they found nothing but space. Dust. Captain, called his engineer, a small furry being named Pip. I'm getting strange readings from Sector 779. Jorok moved to the scanner station. The screen showed something big floating in the darkness, very big. What is it? He asked. Don't know, sir. It's not like anything in our databases. The metal is wrong, the shape is wrong, and Captain ... It's giving off energy. Jorok felt his stomach drop. Things floating in space shouldn't give off energy. Not unless they were. Still active. How much energy? Pip checked his instruments again. A lot, sir. More than our ship makes. And it's growing stronger. Jorik stared at the screen. The object was huge, easily the size of a small moon. It was long and dark, with strange curves and angles that hurt to look at. Lights were beginning to flicker along its surface. Pip, send a message to Confederation Command. Tell them we found something out here. Something big. Yes, sir. What should I tell them it is? Jorik kept staring at the screen. The lights on the object were getting brighter. More of them were turning on every second, like something was waking up after a very long sleep. Tell them, he said slowly, that I think we just found something that wasn't supposed to be found. As Pip sent the message, neither of them noticed the other shapes moving in the darkness around them. Dozens of them, hundreds, all beginning to wake up from their long, patient sleep. The galaxy was about to learn that some things believed dead have a way of coming back to life. The Confederation patrol ship arrived at the coordinates 3 days later. Commander Vextal of the rigid military had brought his best crew to investigate the strange energy readings. His ship was one of the newest in the fleet, armed with weapons that could destroy a small asteroid. There it is, said his sensor officer, pointing at the main screen. Vextal looked and felt his blood turn cold. The object was massive, bigger than anything he had ever seen. It was dark gray with strange markings along its sides. Lights moved across its surface like stars, but they pulsed in patterns that seemed almost alive. What are those symbols? He asked. His cultural expert, a tall, thin being with large eyes, studied the markings. I don't know, Commander. They're not in any language database we have. They look old, very old. How old? Maybe 200 years, maybe more. Vextal felt uncomfortable. 200 years ago was when the humans died out, but this couldn't be human. Humans never built anything this big. They were a young species that barely made it past their own moon. Sir, called the sensor officer, I'm reading more objects. Many more. The screen changed to show the area around them. Vextal's jaw dropped. There were dozens of the huge structures, floating in the darkness. Some were even bigger than the first one. They stretched out in all directions, hidden in the cold space between stars. How did we not know these were here? Vextal whispered. They're using some kind of hiding technology, the sensor officer replied. Our scans barely picked them up until we got close. It's like they've been sleeping. As if hearing those words, the closest structure suddenly blazed with light. Every marking on its surface began to glow bright blue. The lights pulsed faster and faster, like a heartbeat speeding up. Commander, the communications officer called out, fear in her voice. I'm getting signals from inside that thing. Multiple signals. They're life signs. Impossible. These structures have been here for centuries. Nothing could live that long in space. Sir, the readings are clear. There are thousands of living beings inside that structure, and they're moving. Before Vextal could respond, a section of the huge structure began to open. It was like watching a mountain split apart. Inside, he could see corridors filled with light and movement. All ships, this is Commander Vextal, he said into his radio. We have a situation. Unknown structures are active. I repeat, unknown structures are active and occupied. A new voice came over the radio, speaking in perfect galactic standard. The voice was calm, measured, and completely unfamiliar. Confederation. Vessel, this is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Human Colonial Fleet. You have entered restricted space. State your intentions. The bridge went silent. Every being on the ship stared at the communications console as if it had grown tentacles. That's impossible, Vextal said quietly. Humans are extinct. Admiral Chun, he said into the radio, trying to keep his voice steady. This is Commander Vextal of the Confederation Navy. There must be some mistake. The human species died. Out 200 years ago, a laugh came through the speakers. It was not a pleasant sound. Commander, I can assure you that reports of our extinction have been greatly exaggerated. I am very much alive, as are the 43 million humans currently aboard the ships around you. Vextel felt the room spin. 43 million humans. Alive here. How, was all he could manage to say. 200 years ago, your Confederation made it very clear that humanity was not welcome in this galaxy. You called us violent. You called us dangerous. You said we would bring only war and suffering to the peaceful species of the galaxy. The Admiral's voice grew colder. So we left. We took our ships, our people, our dreams, and we went into the dark between the stars. We've been waiting, Commander. Waiting and watching and growing stronger. More lights began turning on throughout the massive fleet. Vextel could see ships of every size, from small fighters to vessels larger than space. Stations. The technology looked advanced, far beyond anything the Confederation had. While you celebrated our extinction, Admiral Chun continued, we were building. While you enjoyed your peace, we were preparing. We've watched your ships pass by our hiding places for decades. We know your trade routes, your military positions, your weaknesses. What do you want? Vextel asked. What we've always wanted, Commander. To live in peace among the stars. But your people decided long ago that we didn't deserve that chance. You made your choice about humanity without ever giving us a voice. A smaller ship detached from the massive structure and began moving toward Vextel's vessel. It was sleek and fast, unlike anything in the Confederation fleet. You will return to your leaders, Admiral Chun said. You will tell them that humanity has returned. You will tell them that we remember what was done to us and that we have not forgotten. Who ordered our extinction? Are you threatening us? Vextel asked. I'm informing you, Commander. Your Confederation spent 2 centuries believing they had solved the human problem by getting rid of us. Now you get to learn what happens when you try to erase a species that refuses to die. The human ship pulled alongside Vextel's vessel. Through the windows, he could see figures in advanced armor. Their faces were hidden behind masks, but their movements were confident and controlled. Your ship will be escorted to the edge of this system, Admiral Chun said. You will not attempt to scan our vessels or record our positions. Any hostile action will be met with immediate response. And then? Then you go home, Commander. You tell your leaders that the humans they thought they destroyed are very much alive. Tell them we've had 200 years to think about what they did to U.S. Tell them we're ready to discuss the future of this galaxy. Vextel looked around his bridge at his terrified crew. Outside, the human fleet stretched as far as his sensors could reach. Ships that moved like nothing he had ever seen, technology that made his advanced vessel look like a child's toy. Admiral Chun, he said quietly, what if they refused to talk? The silence that followed was long and cold. Commander, came the reply, I really hope they don't make that mistake. The Confederation capital world had never seen such chaos. Emergency meetings were called every hour. Ships from every member species rushed toward the center of the galaxy. The news that humans were alive had spread like fire through the government. Chancellor Morden, leader of the Confederation, sat in his office staring at the reports. His hands shook as he read them again and again. 43 million humans. Advanced technology. A fleet that dwarfed anything the Confederation could build. How did our intelligence miss this? He asked his aide. Sir, they were hiding in the deep void between star systems. Our ships never go there. There's nothing out there but empty space and cold. Nothing but 43 million humans, apparently. Knock came at his door. Sir, Captain Webb is here for the meeting. Morden looked up confused. Webb? I don't know any Captain Webb. Sir, he's human. He came on a diplomatic ship. He says he's here to talk. Morden felt his stomach drop. A human was here. On the capital world, in his building. How did he get past our defenses? He didn't try to get past them, sir. His ship just appeared in orbit. One moment there was nothing there. The next moment there was a human vessel. Our sensors never saw it coming. Morden stood up slowly. For 200 years, no human had set foot on any Confederation world. No one was asking for a meeting. Send him in. The door opened and a tall figure walked in. Captain Marcus Webb looked nothing like the pictures Morden had seen in old history books. He was clean, well-dressed, and carried himself with quiet confidence. His uniform was simple but made from materials that seemed to shift and change in the light. "Chancellor Morden," Webb said with a small bow. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." "Captain Webb." Morden tried to keep his voice steady. "You'll forgive me if I'm surprised. We were told your species was extinct." Webb smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yes, I've heard that story. It's interesting how history gets written by the winners, isn't it? What do you want?" Webb walked to the large window that looked out over the capital city. Below, millions of beings went about their daily lives, unaware that everything was about to change. "Beautiful city," Webb said. "So peaceful, so organized. You've built something wonderful here, Chancellor. The Confederation has brought peace to 12 species across thousands of worlds." "Yes, I know. We've been watching." Webb turned back to face Morden. "We've watched your ships, your trade routes, your military exercises. We know where every one of your fleets is stationed. We know which worlds make your weapons, which ones grow your food, which ones mine your metals." Morden felt cold. "Are you threatening us?" "I'm informing you. For 200 years, we've been invisible. Your people celebrated our extinction while we watched from the shadows. We learned everything about you while you forgot we ever existed." Webb walked closer to Morden's desk. "Do you know what happened the day your Confederation decided humanity was too dangerous to live? Your people were violent. You fought wars constantly. You built weapons of mass destruction. We built weapons to protect ourselves from species like yours." Webb's voice remained calm, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "We reached out to the galaxy in friendship. We offered trade, knowledge, cooperation. And your response was to declare us a threat that needed to be eliminated. Your species was young, unpredictable. We were different, and that scared you." Webb placed a small device on Morden's desk. "This contains the complete records of what really happened 200 years ago. The real communications between human and Confederation leaders. The plans your people made to destroy us before we could spread beyond our system." Morden looked at the device but didn't touch it. "We never tried to destroy you," Webb continued. "We simply refused to be destroyed. When it became clear that the Confederation would never accept us, we made a choice. We took our best and brightest, our ships and our dreams, and we left. You hid. We prepared." Webb's smile was cold now. "While your people enjoyed the peace that came from eliminating what you saw as a threat, we spent 2 centuries getting stronger. We developed technology you can't imagine. We built ships that make your best vessels look like toys. We created an entire civilization in the cold dark between stars." Morden finally picked up the device. "What do you want from us?" "Recognition. A place at the table we were denied 200 years ago. The right to exist that your people tried to take from us. And if we refuse?" Webb walked back to the window. In the distance, a small shape appeared in the sky. It was sleek and fast, unlike any Confederation ship. "Chancellor, that's one of our scout vessels. It's been orbiting your world for the past 6 months. Your sensors never detected it. Your defenses never saw it coming. Right now, similar ships are positioned over every major Confederation world." Morden ran to the window. The ship hung in the air like it was painted there, completely motionless. "We're not here to conquer you. Webb said quietly. "We're here to take our place in a galaxy that tried to erase us. We've proven we can remain hidden from you for centuries. We've proven we can appear anywhere we want without warning. The question now is whether this ends with words or with something much worse. You can't fight the entire Confederation." Webb laughed. "Chancellor, we've been planning for this conversation for 200 years. Every move you might make, every strategy you could try, every weapon you could use. We've thought of it all." He turned away from the window. "But we don't want war. We never did. We just want what every species deserves. The right to live freely among the stars. What are your terms? Simple. Full recognition of humanity as a sovereign species. A seat on the Confederation Council. Reparations for the world you destroyed, trying to eliminate us. And a formal apology for 2 centuries of genocide." Morden felt the weight of history pressing down on him. "And if I agree to these terms, then we can finally put the past behind us. We can work together to build the kind of galaxy we all claim to want. And if I refuse?" Webb picked up his device and walked toward the door. "Then you'll learn why the galaxy was right to fear us in the first place. The difference is, this time we're ready for whatever you try to do to us." As the door closed behind the human captain, Morden stared out at the ship hanging in his sky. Somewhere in the dark between stars, 43 million humans were waiting for his answer. He reached for his communications console. It was time to call an emergency session of the Confederation Council. The galaxy was about to change forever. The Confederation Council chamber erupted in chaos. 12 species argued at the same time, their voices mixing into a storm of fear and anger. Chancellor Morden banged his gavel repeatedly, but no one listened. "They must be destroyed," shouted General Krath of the Zolani military. "We eliminated them once. We can do it again." "With what?" asked Ambassador Yilma of the Soft Ones. "You heard the reports. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." "Numbers," Krath replied. "We have thousands of ships. They have what, a few hundred?" "A few hundred that we know of," Morden said. Quietly, the room slowly fell silent. Captain Webb made it clear they've been watching us for 2 centuries. "We have no idea how many ships they really have." Counselor Dex of the Crystal People spoke up. "Maybe we should try negotiation. They said they want to talk." "Talk?" Krath slammed his fist on the table. "They're humans. They don't know how to talk. They only know violence and war." "That was 200 years ago," Dex replied. "Maybe they've changed." "Predators don't change," Krath said. "They just get better at hunting." The argument went on for hours. Some wanted to fight. Others wanted to talk. A few wanted to run and hide. But in the end, General Krath's voice was the loudest. "I will not let these animals threaten our peaceful galaxy," he declared. "The Zolani fleet will deal with this problem once and for all." 3 days later, General Krath assembled the largest fleet in Confederation history. Over 2,000 ships from 6 different species gathered at Kepler Station, a massive military base near the edge of Confederation space. The plan was simple: find the human fleet and destroy it before they could threaten any peaceful worlds. "Today we finish what our ancestors started," Krath announced to his captains. "The human plague ends here." The fleet moved out in perfect formation. Krath felt confident. His ships were new, his crews were trained, and he had overwhelming numbers. What could a few hundred human ships do against the might of the Confederation? Admiral Sarah Chun watched the approaching fleet from the bridge of her flagship. The massive Confederation armada filled her screens, their ships spread out in a formation that had worked for them for centuries. "Admiral," called her tactical officer, "the Confederation fleet is maintaining standard approach. 2,043 ships. They're using formation Delta 7. Chun smiled. "Of course they are. It's the same formation they've used. for every major battle for the past 50 years. Orders, Admiral? Begin Phase 1. Let them see what they're really fighting. Around the Confederation fleet, space began to ripple. What had appeared empty suddenly filled with ships. Human vessels decloaked in perfect coordination, appearing above, below, and around the Confederation formation General Krath stared at, his screens in horror. The humans didn't have a few hundred ships. They had thousands. His formation was completely surrounded. "How many?" he whispered. 5,000 ships, sir, maybe more. They're still appearing. Impossible. We would have detected a fleet that size. Sir, I'm reading energy signatures I've never seen before. Their ships are generating power levels that should be impossible. On the human flagship, Admiral Chun opened a communication channel to the Confederation fleet. "General Krath, this is Admiral Chun. You have entered human space with hostile intent. Stand down your weapons and withdraw, or face the consequences." Krath's face appeared on Chun's screen. He looked older than his file suggested, with scars from old battles marking his blue skin. "Human," he spat, "you should have stayed dead. The galaxy has no place for your kind." "The galaxy will have to make room," Chun replied calmly. "This is your last warning. I'd rather die than negotiate with animals. As you wish." Chun nodded to her tactical officer. "Begin Phase 2. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. The human ships didn't charge forward like the Confederation expected. They didn't fire massive volleys of weapons. Instead, they moved like dancers. Small human fighters weaved between the larger Confederation ships, too fast for the big guns to track. They struck at specific points, disabling weapons and engines with surgical precision. Larger human vessels used beams of energy that passed right through Confederation shields, as if they weren't there. "Shields are useless," one of Krath's captains reported. "Their weapons ignore our defenses completely. Return fire. All ships, return fire." The Confederation fleet unleashed everything they had: energy beams, missiles, plasma cannons. The space around them lit up like a star. But when the light faded, the human ships were still there, untouched. "Impossible," Krath breathed. On her flagship, Chen watched her forces systematically dismantle the Confederation fleet. 2 centuries of technological development had given humanity advantages the Confederation couldn't match. Their shields adapted to any weapon fired at them. Their engines allowed impossible maneuvers. Their weapons could strike through any defense. But Chun's real weapon was knowledge. Humanity had watched every Confederation battle for decades. They knew every tactic, every formation, every weakness. The humans fought like they could read the enemy's mind. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "Confederation flagship is losing power. Their formation is breaking apart. Begin Phase 3. Boarding operations." Small human ships attached themselves to damaged Confederation vessels. Soldiers in advanced armor cut through hull plating like it was paper. They moved through enemy ships with weapons that stunned rather than killed, capturing entire crews. In minutes, General Krath watched his fleet fall apart around him. His ships were being captured faster than they could retreat. His weapons couldn't touch the human vessels. His formations, perfected over centuries of warfare, meant nothing against an enemy that moved like ghosts. "Sir," his communications officer called, "Admiral Chun is requesting your surrender." Krath looked around his bridge. Half his controls were dark. His weapons were offline. Through his viewports, he could see human soldiers boarding his nearby ships. "General," Chun's voice came over the speakers, "your fleet is finished. Surrender now and your people will be treated well. Continue fighting and they'll be destroyed." Krath closed his eyes. His ancestors had led the war against humanity 2 centuries ago. They had called it necessary to protect the galaxy. Now he understood the truth. They hadn't been protecting anything. They had just made an enemy out of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Admiral Chun, he said quietly, I surrender. Wise choice, General. Around the battlefield, the remaining Confederation ships lowered their weapons. The battle was over. In less than 4 hours, the largest fleet in Confederation history had been completely defeated by an enemy they thought was extinct. Chun looked out at the captured ships drifting in space. The message was sent. The galaxy would know that humanity had returned, and that they were no longer the weak species that could be pushed around. Send word to Chancellor Mordine, she told her communications officer. Tell him we're ready to discuss terms. The war was over before it really began. Now came the harder part, making peace with people who had tried to destroy them. The Galactic Assembly Hall looked very different now. The same chamber where Ambassador Kethver had celebrated humanity's extinction 3 months ago was now preparing to welcome humans back to the galaxy. The irony was not lost on anyone. Admiral Sarah Chun walked slowly to the center podium. Her hair was now completely gray, and her uniform bore the marks of 2 centuries in space. Behind her stood Captain Webb and a dozen other human representatives. They moved with quiet confidence, knowing that every eye in the galaxy was watching. Chancellor Morden introduced her with words that would have been impossible just months before. Members of the Galactic Assembly, I present Admiral Sarah Chun, representative of the human colonial government. The hall was silent, no cheering this time, no celebration. Just the weight of history changing direction. Chun looked out at the assembled beings. Many of them had grown up on stories of human violence. Some had ancestors who fought in the war 2 centuries ago. Others had never seen a human before today. Members of the assembly, Chun began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall. I stand before you as proof that reports of our extinction were greatly exaggerated. A few nervous laughs echoed in the hall. 200 years ago, your governments decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist alongside the peaceful species of this galaxy. You called us violent. You called us unpredictable. You said we would bring only war and chaos to the stars. Chun paused, looking around the room. And perhaps you were right to be afraid. We were young then. We made mistakes. We fought among ourselves. We built weapons that could destroy worlds. Ambassador Kethver shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had led the propaganda campaign against humanity. Now he was listening to one of them speak in the same hall where he had celebrated their death. But what you never tried to understand, Chun continued, was why we fought. Humans don't fight because we love violence. We fight because we refuse to surrender what we believe is right. We fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We fight when peaceful solutions are taken away from us. Her voice grew stronger. You never gave us a chance to prove we could be peaceful. You decided our fate based on fear and prejudice. You chose genocide over cooperation. The word genocide hit the assembly like a physical blow. It was the truth they had all avoided for 2 centuries. They had not simply won a war. They had tried to erase an entire species from existence. When we realized what you intended to do, Chun said, we had a choice. We could fight a war that would destroy billions on both sides. Or we could disappear. We could take our people and our dreams and find a new way to survive. She gestured to the humans standing behind her. These people represent 43 million humans who chose survival over revenge. For 200 years, we lived in the cold darkness between stars. We raised children who never saw a sun. We built cities in the empty void. We created an entire civilization based on one simple belief, that someday we would return to claim our place among the stars. Chancellor Mordine leaned forward. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. What did humanity want now that they had proven their strength? During those 2 centuries, Chun continued, we watched you. We learned about each of your species. We studied your cultures, your languages, your ways of thinking. And do you know what we discovered? The hall was completely silent. We discovered that you are not so different from us. You love your children. You dream of better futures. You hope for peace and prosperity. You fear death and loss and being forgotten. Chun smiled for the first time since taking the podium. You are not the monsters we imagined when we left. And perhaps we are not the monsters you imagined either. A young Zilani in the audience raised her hand. Chun nodded to her. Admiral, if you're not here for revenge, what do you want? Chun looked at the child for a long moment. She was probably the same age as Chun's own great-granddaughter, born in the cold depths of space and raised on stories of the homeworld her family had left behind. What we've always wanted, Chun replied. A place to call home, the right to trade with other species, the chance to explore new worlds and make new discoveries, the opportunity to contribute to something greater than ourselves. She turned to address the full assembly. We're not here to conquer you. We've proven we could have done that at any time during the past 2 centuries. We're not here to demand territory or tribute. We have our own worlds now, hidden in the spaces you never bothered to explore. Then what are your terms? Chancellor Mordin asked. Chun pulled out a small device and activated it. A holographic document appeared above the assembly, written in 12 different languages. Recognition of the human colonial government as a sovereign nation. A seat on this assembly with full voting rights. Trade agreements that allow human merchants to visit Confederation worlds. And most importantly, a formal acknowledgement of what was done to us, so that it never happens to another species again. General Krath, who had been released after his defeat at Kepler Station, stood up slowly. His arm was in a sling from the battle, but his voice was clear. And if we refuse these terms? Chun's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. General, 3 months ago you commanded the largest fleet in Confederation history. Where is that fleet now? Krath sat back down without answering. Everyone knew where his fleet was. Half of it was being repaired in human shipyards. The other half had been returned to the Confederation as a gesture of goodwill, but not before human engineers had studied every system and weapon. We don't want war, Chun said. We never did. But we will not be driven away again. We will not hide in the darkness while others decide our fate. This galaxy is big enough for all of us, but only if we choose to make it so. Ambassador Kefver stood up slowly. The old Zilani looked like he had aged decades in the past few months. Admiral Chun, he said, his voice shaking slightly. On behalf of the Zilani people, I formally apologize for the actions of our ancestors. We were wrong to try to destroy your species. We were wrong to deny you a place in the galaxy. One by one, other representatives stood up. The Crystal people, the Soft Ones, the Rock Folk, each offered their own apology. Each acknowledged the truth of what had been done. Chun nodded to each of them. When the last representative sat down, she looked out over the assembly one final time. The past cannot be changed, she said. But the future is still ours to write. Humanity returns to the galaxy not as conquerors, but as neighbors. We offer our friendship to those who will accept it, our knowledge to those who will share theirs, our protection to those who need it. She stepped back from the podium. The choice, as always, is yours. Chancellor Mordin called for the vote. One by one, the 12 species of the Confederation voted to accept humanity back into the galaxy. Some voted enthusiastically, others voted reluctantly. But in the end, the result was unanimous. As Admiral Chun left the assembly hall, she looked up at the sky through the great windows. Somewhere out there, human ships were already moving toward their new home among the stars. Children who had been born in the darkness would finally see sunlight. Families separated by war would be reunited. The galaxy had tried to erase humanity from existence. Instead, they had created something stronger. something that refused to be broken. Humanity was home.